Today I saw The Circle. I saw the trailer a couple months ago, and I thought the concept looked kind of interesting. It was a little vague, but it basically just seemed like, I don't know, an evil social media company or something. And it said it was based on a book of the same name. And so for some reason I decided with this particular movie I would read the book first, which I've done before with the BFG and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and a couple others. I've yet to see a single book adaptation that really does a perfect job of translating the book to the big screen. The Chocolate War is the closest I can think of because they did that almost perfectly, but even in that, they changed the ending completely in the movie. And that's the most faithful adaptation I can think of, is one where they completely rewrote the ending. And so I knew even before I read the book that they weren't going to do a good job with this adaptation, because Hollywood never does. But I was still curious, and I still read the book. I ended up finishing it a couple days before the movie came out, and since this video is supposed to be just as much a review of the book than it is of the movie, I'll start with what I thought of that first. So if you want to skip past me talking about the book, there are links in the description to different parts of the video, so you can skip past stuff. Now, I got it from the library, obviously, because I'm not going to pay for a book I haven't read, and it was interesting. They had a card in the back of the book where people who read it could leave little thoughts of what they thought of the book in it, and I see a lot of 9 and 8-star ratings, and people were saying the book was really scary. And so when I was reading the book, I kept waiting for it to turn into like a thriller, but it never did. There were some tense moments, although for me they more translated to awkwardness. This book was extremely awkward to read. I had to keep closing it and just taking a minute before I kept reading because whatever was going on in the book was just too painful to read. Not just in the tense moments though. Those were actually good. There were even some good twists in it. But there was also a lot of weird sex stuff in this book that I did not expect at all, especially since the movie is supposed to be PG-13, so I was wondering how they could possibly fit that stuff into the movie. Also, I should mention, by the time I read the book, I didn't remember anything that had happened in the trailer for the movie, and when I did end up finishing the book, I watched the trailer again, and I could tell there were so many spoilers of major parts of the book. Like, the two biggest intense moments or twists were right there in the trailer, and it wasn't totally clear what was going on because it was going by so fast in the trailer, but it's still right there. So if anyone was really paying attention or trying to do a trailer analysis or anything, I think it'd be pretty clear. They're not really hiding anything, it's just right there in the trailer. So definitely don't watch the trailer before you read the book or watch the movie if you decide to do either of those things. Honestly, it's a bit of a weird book, but I would recommend it. It's even hard to tell what the author's standpoint on the whole situation in the book is, which I guess is a good thing. I guess that means he did a good job with that. I mean, the author's viewpoint shouldn't be too apparent when you're reading the book, but it would be interesting to know what he thinks about all of this technology and stuff. I think if I did know, I would be looking at the book differently. Like I said though, there's some very adult stuff in this book, so be warned about that, I guess. Meanwhile, while the movie is still kind of inappropriate because of some stuff they did leave in from the book, it's more for general audiences. Although honestly, that's a bad thing. If you're adapting something that's meant to be adult, you shouldn't make it so that it should be for general audiences. But that's just one thing the movie messed up. There's honestly so much stuff in this book that they just left out or rearranged or just changed completely. In this video, I'm not even going to be able to scratch the surface of all the stuff they changed, but I'm going to try, because honestly I'm sick of Hollywood doing this to books. They did it to the BFG, they did it to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, they kind of did it to Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, but I honestly didn't like that book, so I didn't care as much when they changed so much stuff in the movie. It was kind of welcome, because even though I hate for them to change stuff from the books, even if it's an improvement, if the book is just not very good to begin with, then I don't care. But I'm sure there were people who did care, people who were fans of the book, and so it sucks for those people, so even then they still shouldn't do it. It actually reminds me of a comment I read about the Netflix series Unfortunate Events adaptation, aka one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen, but the person brought up how there were some things that were unresolved by the last book in the series, and that maybe they can wrap some of those things up in the Netflix show, and I really disagree with that, because even if it is unsatisfying for those things to not have been wrapped up, if the creator of the series meant for them to be wrapped up, they would have been wrapped up by the last book. It's not the job of people adapting the series to try to tie up loose ends. I haven't watched the entire show yet, but from what I can see, they wouldn't have even got a chance to do that because they changed so much stuff, and that's the case with the adaptation of The Circle, because they changed so much, there's nothing they could have improved on, because it's really its own thing. Although I guess it's more like the adaptation of the BFG or Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, because they actually kept a lot of stuff. So from the trailer, it actually looked like it might be kind of faithful, because I could tell they were even doing some scenes word for word, which they did. There were a lot of scenes in the movie that were taken word for word from the book, but honestly, when they do that in adaptations and then change so much other stuff, it just makes it more frustrating for me. Which is why I gave the BFG and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World such low scores. I don't think I'll give The Circle as low of a score as those because I don't care about the source material as much. Like, I loved the Scott Pilgrim vs. the World books, and the BFG was great. The Circle I thought was pretty good, but it was, I don't know, it was weird. It was uncomfortable. I didn't love it, but I'll talk more about that later. This movie was incredibly frustrating to watch as someone who's read the book, but in the end I didn't care as much about the source material, so it doesn't make me think the movie is worse. I mean, I'm still giving it a lower score for being a terrible adaptation, but I'm just saying since I didn't love the source material, like I could give it an even lower score like I did with the BFG. I gave it like a 4.5. I haven't decided quite yet, but I will by the end of this video. I think I'm only gonna give the movie like 5.5 or something, like not as low as that. I'll get back to that. At this point, I'm just going to try to name as many differences as I can without spoiling anything. And I think the biggest apparent difference is the casting, and it's actually really easy to point out how bad they do with that too, because there's a clear description of the main character May in the book that I'll just quickly describe right now. Wide mouth, thin lips, olive skin, black hair, high cheekbones, brown eyes, and it says she's pretty curvy. And so of course, it makes perfect sense that they would cast Emma Watson. I mean, who else would fit that description better than Emma Watson? No, but honestly, they totally whitewashed her character. And the character of Mercer is also supposed to be like a heavyset guy, so they cast the skinny kid from Boyhood. And then Tom Stenton, he's the character that's the COO of The Circle. He's like this serious-looking older guy, so they cast Patton Oswalt. Although I do think Tom Hanks was the perfect choice to play Eamon Bailey. And I was open to seeing what Patton Oswalt could do with the role of Stenton, although he didn't end up really doing anything with it. In fact, the character didn't even really need to be there the way they used him in the movie. Tom Hanks' character would have honestly been enough. Bill Paxton also did a great job. I think he was cast well. It's too bad this was his last movie though, because it was honestly pretty shit. He did a good job, just the movie in general was a terrible adaptation, and it ended up feeling rushed and confusing because of the way they changed the story so much. Even though the screenplay ended up being co-written with the director of the movie and by the author of the book, Dave Eggers, I don't think Dave Eggers really has experience writing screenplays, at least that's not what it seemed like in the movie. It felt like they were just picking and choosing things to use from the book to put in the movie. And it felt like the other writer, who was also the director of the movie, just kept trying to make compromises with him, like, alright, let's just rearrange it a little so that the movie's not as long, we don't need this part, and these two characters can be combined into one character, which is actually something they do in the movie, which is just incredible that they thought that would be okay. And then, of course, one of the worst things you can do is completely change the ending, which they did. The book had a cool, kind of Twilight Zone-y ending, and I think that's all I'm gonna say about that, but they really don't do that at all in the movie. It's completely different. I kind of want to start getting into spoilers now, so I'll just say, don't see this movie, just read the book. The book is pretty good, the movie is just terrible. And especially don't see the movie and not read the book. If you are going to see the movie, read the book first, because you can't read the book after. The movie ruins it. Honestly, this movie sucks and I hate it. That's how I feel about it. When you're gonna screw over a book that badly, then just fuck you. Yeah, I think I just give it a 5 out of 10. I could probably give it a lower score, but 5 is bad enough. And now I'm going to get into spoilers for both the book and the movie, so if you haven't read the book, then don't watch any further. If you haven't seen the movie, that's fine, but I will be getting into spoilers of the book. And yeah, actually, I should say I am going to be spoiling the movie too. I'm just saying it doesn't matter because the movie sucked. Okay, so the main character of May. After having read the ending of the book where she turns in Ty and ends up embracing the Circle, it's pretty clear. I don't think we're supposed to like her character. It's not a fight the system book. It's not like the Hunger Games or something, even though it's a dystopian society type thing. Kind of. I think it's more like it's the beginning of a dystopian society thing and doesn't really get there all the way. Which is cool. It's like a twist on the concept. I don't think it's like copying anything. It really feels original, which I like. And I like that we're not supposed to like her character. But then in the movie, they rewrite so much stuff where we're not supposed to hate her character as much. Like when they're doing the Soul Search presentation and everyone says to track down Mercer. In the book, which you should know if you're watching, you should have already read the book. Bailey and Stanton and the audience didn't make her do it. That was her idea. And she just thought it was a fun thing. And she was the cause of Mercer's death, really. And he ended up killing himself. In the movie, it was a mistake when a drone flies in front of his truck and he ends up swerving off the bridge. It's much less dark, and really for no reason because it was a PG-13 movie and they could have included that. But that's another thing. This movie should have been rated R because of all the weird sex stuff in it. I mean, I definitely think it should have toned that down for the movie because it just felt unnecessary in the book book how far they were going with that. It was like perverse and didn't serve a lot of purpose. But I think the movie still should have been rated R. They could have had more F words too, which were in the book. But anyway, like I was saying about May, it's really weird how they ended the movie because it's like they didn't make May's character to be the bad guy anymore. Not that she was really the bad guy in the book because she was the protagonist, but by the end I think we definitely weren't supposed to be rooting for her anymore. We're just supposed to be like, wow, I can't believe she did that. Like I said, it's like a Twilight Zone-y ending. You're just like thinking about how messed up that world's gonna be now. But in the movie, it still ends with it being a messed up world. It's just that she also betrays Bailey and Stenton for some reason. So that she can be the head of the circle or something. Or not the head of the circle, but like the head of this new messed up world they're making. It was almost like they still wanted to do some weird Twilight Zone-y ending, but it didn't really make as much sense. It was really going so fast that if someone hadn't read the book and went to see the movie, I don't even know how they could have kept track of it all. It didn't really give you a chance to get a feel of the world the story's taking place in. It's a slower build-up in the book, where things kind of get more and more uneasy for the main character, and then of course finally she gives in by the end and embraces it and kind of screws over the world. In the movie, the story is so rushed and mixed around, it's hard to even figure out what's happening, kind of. I don't know, I might do a step-by-step comparison to the book and the movie, like I'm trying to do with a series of unfortunate events, but that would be a while from now, so I don't know if I'm going to do that because I'd have to read the book again probably, which is over 400 pages, so I don't know if I'll ever do that, but yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm going to stop talking about spoilers in case anyone wanted to tune back in. There was a link to skip past the spoilers part. I really don't have anything else to say except for fuck the movie, don't watch the movie, just read the book. I also wouldn't recommend the audiobook because it was really awkward with the guy narrating that, the voices he did, in my opinion anyway. I mean, I like audiobooks, but I didn't think that particular audiobook was very good. I listened to it for the second half of the book so I could speed it up and watch the movie. So yeah, I do recommend this book. Don't watch the trailer, don't watch the movie, just the book. And next time I guess I might see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Or Trolls.